Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast. This is the United Show. This is Devil's Advocate. I remember when I done my first podcast with these two lads down here, the Newcastle United fans, both Martin and Pete, and there was a lot of trepidation between the three of us when we were talking about our football clubs. This is fast forward 12 months later. We're now talking about both of our clubs in a League Cup final. It's absolutely mad. Football is an absolutely mad game. So great to see both lads here. We're here today, obviously, to talk tomorrow's Carabao Cup final. Also joined by channel regular Shane and Marc as well. How's it going, boys? How are you?
Yeah, we're all good. All good. Excited for tomorrow. We're just slightly envious of the 100,000 mags that are currently tearing up Trafalgar Square. So yeah, wish I was there, but yeah, unfortunately not. So I'll be in a local pub with a mate of mine who's actually a Sunderland fan, which kind of doesn't bode well. So I'll probably be with a Mackem surrounded by Manx and hopefully a few Scousers who might be on my side for a couple of hours tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, looking forward to it.
He's going to be cheering for United, no doubt. So he's already my mate.
I'd say so, yeah, he will do. Although they got tonked off Coventry this afternoon, so I probably can't really say too much, Marc, so I'd say he'd be quiet enough.
Yeah. Look, it's mad because obviously this game, I think there's going to be the country at the minute is going to be split. You probably have like Sunderland fans and people like that cheering for United tomorrow, and then you're going to have like Liverpool, Chelsea, Man City, Arsenal fans, the whole lot cheering for Newcastle tomorrow. So it's going to be a good one. I say social media is going to be an absolute mental place to be tomorrow. But we've a lot to chat about. Obviously, like both of our football clubs have been on brilliant form this season. And again, like I said at the start, I think there's a lot of change that's happened with both clubs in the last 12 to 18 months. But look, I'll come to United lads first in terms of the Barcelona game. Marc done the reaction on the Barcelona game, but we will just touch on it briefly. Marc, what do you think of the game? Obviously, like, look, it was a 2-1 win, and I suppose a very decisive win in their season. Do you have any concerns that we had such a intense game so close to a cup final? I know we've done it before in years past where we'd have an intense game before a cup final and we'd go on to win. But this is obviously a different time, different Manchester United. Do you think that performance the other night could almost blow the gas out of Manchester United, or do you think we've another level to reach post Barcelona?
Yeah, I do think there's certainly another level for sure. But listen, I think when it comes to rivalries, when it comes to cup final, I think all that goes out the window. I think everybody is very much ready. And I think there's always a little bit of more impetus in order to bring as much energy as possible. It was a wonderful win on Thursday night, and very happy to beat arguably the best team in the competition. And it's a going back to your conversation earlier, it's a totally different position that both Newcastle and Manchester United are in at the moment, and it's great. It's great to have this debate. It's great to have, obviously for you guys, a little bit more money now, and obviously really sort of reaping the rewards. But listen, Newcastle have been fantastic this season. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Their defensive capability is improved tenfold. Particularly with obviously Botman coming into the team. But saying that, I think that obviously you have struggled to score goals at times, and I think that United have really shut up shop, and their defence is also looking very, very good. But anything can happen in a cup final. I think United at the moment we're certainly drawing the short straw, and we're playing a game every 3.2 days, which I think is probably a lot more than most in the rest of the league. But what a day tomorrow is going to be. I'm sure that there will be a lot of emotions riding about, and may the best team win.
Absolutely, I do second that. And look, we're riding high at the moment, but I think, like you said, games every 3 days. There's going to obviously be a level of fatigue. There's going to be a level of, I suppose, mental fatigue there as well, not just physical fatigue. So it's going to be interesting to see how the players deal with how Erik ten Hag manages the squad, and also how he picks his 11 tomorrow, which is something. Obviously, I will be getting both Shane and Marc United starting 11s as of Martin's and Pete's as well, for the game. But look, it's very interesting talking points to come up tonight. Shane, obviously a big talking point coming into tomorrow's game is the fitness of Marcus Rashford. We've seen he went off with a knock against Barcelona in the kind of closing stages of the game, and obviously we've seen the video circulating afterwards that he came out with a bit of a limp. Post match, he's obviously after travelling with the Manchester United squad today. He was pictured with the travelling squad leaving for London today. Are you concerned, I suppose, with the amount of games he's played, that he's going to be at full 100% fitness tomorrow, or do you think Erik ten Hag is the type of manager that won't, I suppose, take a risk if a player is injured?
I think he probably will take a risk if he's injured, just because for most of the season Rashford's basically carried our attack, and it being a cup final, if you're going to take a risk, these are the games you do. So I don't know how serious it is. I think someone said today that he's meant to be starting tomorrow, that he's okay. I don't know how true that is, but I think I'm sure Ten Hag will ask Rashford, does he think he's fit enough to play, and I'm sure Rashford will tell him he is. So I think if there's any possibility at all that he starts tomorrow, Ten Hag will go with it, because we can't really be without him in a game this big.
Yeah, look, I think he's definitely been our most important player this season, and he's been very potent in front of goal, and not only just his goal scoring threat. I think his ability to lead us in transition and help us, in the counter attack situations is key. And if you look at Kieran Trippier and trying to pin him back tomorrow, I think Marcus Rashford needs to play tomorrow, because again, we know how integral Trippier is to Newcastle's attack in terms of getting forward, getting beyond Almiron, and getting balls into the box. I think here, if we have Rashford there tomorrow, it may pin Trippier back that small bit to say, look, if he overcommits, then we have Rashford in transition. So I think it's very important that he definitely plays tomorrow. And look, as we said, I think right now he's one of the top players in the Premier League right now. Look at his goal scoring record, and look, his overall, like you said, I think carrying United's attack at the moment. He's been a player who's rejuvenated his career. I think, like we've always said, Erik ten Hag and Benny McCarthy do deserve a lot of credit for helping Rashford, and also Rashford himself for, build himself back up.
I think if he does have a knock, depending how serious it is, there's probably a good chance he's going to play him up front, so he doesn't have to track back as much, I suppose. But I don't know really, but that's probably an option anyway, just because Weghorst hasn't been great for us up front. He's kind of actually better in midfield, judging by the last few games, just with the work rate and that.
Yeah, Weghorst, one thing I say about Weghorst is he's probably not that potent number 9 that'll come in there and, score you 10, 15 goals a season. But he's someone who, I think he works hard, he works his socks off, he brings players into play. A lot of people in our comment section have been battering me and Greg the last couple of shows that they think he's completely obsolete as a footballer. But I see the role he has. And again, look, he's Weghorst right now is a stopgap, and when you look at the situation with Cristiano relieving,
just
Martial,
to interject a little bit, Keane, I think
Yeah.
I think that's, people have to look at Weghorst for what he is. I think people seem to miss the things that he does off the ball, and ultimately there was no money in January. Okay, United are looking to sell the club. This is a man that's come in that is done very well in Germany. Was doing pretty well in Turkey, and ultimately he's a 6-month loan deal. Yeah, he's coming in to he's got the highest, he's one of the highest press rates in the Premier League at Burnley, and for a team like Burnley, it was higher than other clubs at Liverpool and a few others too. And I think that we have to look at it for what it is. And I've been quite impressed with him. Yes, he's not banging in the goals, but fortunately we've had Rashford to do that. He holds the ball up very well, presses very high, and I think he does a lot more off the ball than people give him credit for.
Yeah, his work rate's been exceptional in that regard. And look, if you look back at the first Barcelona game, the second Leeds game at Ellen Road, them two games especially, his work off the ball really helped us in transition and helped bring the likes of Sancho and Rashford into play, and really helped us in transition. So look, again, like you said, he's a stopgap 6-month signing, and look, I think at the end of the day, we didn't have much options. The club were broke. The club are broke at the moment. There's a reason why the Glazers are looking for investment and looking to sell the club at the same time. They're weighing out the options, because look, they've bled every bit of money that's out of the club at possible. I think the two lads below us will know that. With Mike Ashley previously as well. They can kind of understand our gripes with ownership as well. So look, it's a 6-month signing, and look, hopefully when new owners come in, he's not our first choice. Now I wouldn't mind him as a squad player, maybe 4th choice striker, to play in the cup competitions next season, but not starting in the Premier League every week. But look, he's doing an okay job so far, and I can't fault him for that. Going to come to the opposition now, because obviously you've had a tremendous season. New ownership, Eddie Howe came in, and a lot of people thought Howe was going to come in just to, like, steady the ship, get you out relegation, and then you're going to bring in like a Jose Mourinho, or you're going to bring in like a big name manager under his new ownership. That hasn't happened. Howe's really kind of exceeded expectations and done more than steady the ship. Newcastle seems to be in a very good place right now. I'll come to you first, Pete. Like, talk to me about how the feeling is around the Newcastle fan base moment with your manager. Like, how happy are you with the job Eddie Howe is doing? And like, could you have imagined when you hired him last season that he'd even have you in the European place, never mind in the fight for a top 4 and a cup final?
I don't think any Newcastle fan expected us to be where we are right now. We would have hoped for it, and we're certainly going to take it right now. But I don't think anyone would have expected us to be on this trajectory as quickly as we are. You mentioned Eddie Howe. Every Newcastle fan that I know is fully behind Eddie Howe, 110%. We are behind him. We believe in him. Even if there's an opportunity where, a decision's made that fans go, not quite sure, but then the response is, well, we back Eddie Howe, so we'll go with it, and we're trusting that he makes the right decision. And we are fully behind what he's doing and how he's kind of revamped the club from top to bottom. You only have to look at some of the players that he's gone in with and made better. We know the obvious ones, the Shaws and the Joe Lintons and the Miggies, but even Sean Longstaff more recently. And Marc might disagree with that, but Sean Longstaff, from where he was when Eddie Howe took over, and look, Sean Longstaff in his interviews in the build-up to this week has talked openly about it. He thought he was a goner. His contract was out at the end of last season. He thought he was going to go in January. He didn't think he had a future. But Eddie, he kind of credits Eddie Howe and Matt Ritchie that have kind of both pulled him aside and spoken to him and managed to change his career around. And, this is what Eddie Howe's done. It's not been about the Man City, Chelsea spending money and going mad. We're not able to do that because of FFP anyway, which a lot of fans from opposition fans don't seem to understand. But what we've done has been very, very smart, and we've worked with the players that we've got, and to get some of those players that were, some of them not even getting in the team under Steve Bruce, now in a position where they're sitting 5th in the league, about to play in some of their first ever cup finals. It's just amazing turnaround for Newcastle in such a short space of time.
And do you look at his ability to improve them players, like Miguel Almiron, Sean Longstaff, and like you said, players like Joe Linton, players who look, I think Almiron and Joe Linton definitely who are, I suppose, signings for Newcastle time. Obviously, Longstaff was an academy player, probably didn't have as much expectations as the other two. Do you think his ability from a coaching standpoint really has kind of really earned the respect in Newcastle faithful? Considering, look, he had Rafa Benitez, he did idolise, like, your fan base loved Rafa when he was there, and obviously, you had Steve Bruce before that. So do you think his ability to coach players has that really drawn yourselves to him?
I'll be honest with you, there's a clear difference between Eddie Howe and Rafa Benitez, in that Eddie Howe likes to get players playing on the front foot. Like me and Marc sat through the Rafa Benitez years, and we enjoyed Rafa and we loved Rafa for what he did under difficult circumstances. But being honest, the football wasn't great. It wasn't entertaining. It was there to serve a purpose. It was there to get us to 40 points every year in order to stay in the Premier League. Whereas you've got Eddie Howe that is progressive. He wants us to get forward. He wants us to press high. You'll see it tomorrow. We will press high. We will not let the likes of Varane and Martinez get any time on the ball. We won't allow it, and we will press. But the key to what Eddie Howe's done is he's made us one of the fittest teams in the league, in that we won't just press for 5 or 10 minutes and then drop off for 20. We'll do it for 90 minutes. And if it needs be 95, 97 minutes, because we've proven it time and time again this season that we've got players that will run all day for the club. And when they can't give any more, they're subbed, and the next player that comes on will do exactly the same. And he's built that intensity in the team, and he has it, and he's talked about it a lot. Intensity is our identity, and it certainly has proven to be the case this season.
Yeah, look, I think the defensive work rate definitely it's been something that's been impressive as well. Like how you keep your shape when you lose the ball, has been very, very, very impressive. And keeping clean sheets has been something that previous to that under Steve Bruce was non-existent. And his, I think, ability to revamp the team and also do it in a way where it's not just a full-fledged like defensive system like Rafa Benitez. It's been a blend of both. You can press high, but also when you don't have the ball, you get back into shape. And it's similarly to something what Ten Hag's done with us almost, in terms of making us defensively solid, but also we're at the top of the pitch, you have the likes of Rashford, Anthony, Weghorst, Jadon Sancho now back pressing high as well. So look, it's good to see from that standpoint that both managers have kind of revamped their teams, because both teams didn't have a high work rate before that. And if you looked at stats, probably pre both of our managers, we're probably the least hard-working teams in the Premier League. And now when you look at this game, it's two very hard-working teams at the moment. So look, it's two teams have done a full 180. So it's great to see two big clubs kind of almost get back to, well, not almost to their best yet, because obviously the season hasn't ended yet, but there is a rebuilding job done on both sides. Martin, obviously, look, you're fighting for the top four at the moment, and there's obviously a clear kind of rejuvenation overall under this new ownership, under this new manager. But post World Cup, there's been a couple of times where you've dropped points in certain games. I know United have the disadvantage of playing every 2-3 days, and look, I think that way, fatigue wise, eventually United are going to hit that slump this season where we're going to drop points. We know it's coming at some stage, but at the moment, do you think with the injuries, with Isak coming in and out of the team, Wilson in and out of the team, do you have any concerns from a goal scoring standpoint this moment in time that the goals might dry up and it might be a case you might hit kind of a bump in the race for top four because of squad depth compared to, let's say, likes of Tottenham, compared to likes of Liverpool behind you right now?
Do you know what? I think every team is going to hit a patch where it's just not running your way. I think the thing for me, we all kind of know that Wilson can be injury prone, and it is a concern. He's a completely different striker to Isak in that he's some of the goals, you take the goal he scored against Man City, some of the angles he can score a goal from, he's a natural kind of poacher, I would say. Isak is a bit more kind of free flow and likes to kind of get the ball early and run at it. I think the important thing for us is that we're still creating the chances. I would be more worried with where we were if we weren't creating the chances. I think you look at the Liverpool game, defensively, that first 15 minutes they went 2 up was probably, Pete will tell you, probably the worst we've played all season defensively. We just were out of sorts, I would say. The point at the other end, when Wilson goes through, he should have buried it, and he didn't. And if that had probably fallen to an Isak or a Joe Linton, we probably would have got ourselves back in the game. And I think more so importantly, as Pete was talking about the press and the energy, we actually played better against Liverpool with 10 and probably played them off the park than we did with 11 when Pope went off. So I think that press, as you said, Keane, I think that press is really, really important. I think, we were talking coming on air before kind of Marc and Shane came on, and I said, I think that if the game is really close, I think that last 20 minutes on a really big Wembley pitch could suit Newcastle, because I think we've probably got, because we've had that little bit of extra time and that bit of stamina that we've got, I think we may just have a little bit more gas in the tank towards that 75, 80 minute mark, maybe to do something. So I'm not overly concerned that the goals are dried up. I think, Pete's right, from a point of a season, look, let's pull no punches. We're completely overachieving from where we should be. Let's not hide that fact. Will we take it with both hands? Absolutely. If you'd have sat me down at the start of the season and went, listen, lads, you'll be in fifth with a cup final, I'd have been, writing your prescription and getting your section. I would never have believed it. But Eddie's taken teams. You look at Joe Linton, we brought him in, 40 million for a striker, couldn't hit a barn door with Steve Bruce playing up front, completely isolated. A lot of talk then coming into the pre-season about, possibly a move into midfield, what Eddie could do with him. He's gone into that midfield, into that middle with Bruno, Joe Willock, Sean Longstaff, and he's turned into a powerhouse. He's one of the best, I would say, midfielders in the league at the moment, doing the job that he does. And I think I was saying to Pete on text before we came on, I actually think Joe Linton could be the difference in the middle of the park tomorrow. I just have a little feel for him, but it'll be a tight game. But Eddie has kind of cemented where we were. One of the things that we spoke about on Loaded Mag very, very early in the season was the absolute difference in our fitness is unbelievable. Steve Bruce's training was, get 11 lads, throw a ball in the middle and then bugger off back into his office. Eddie Howe is at the training park at 5:30 in the morning. The players are designed, the training is designed, shuttle play, training patterns, the physio work, everything, sports physio, analyzing, everything is done and pre-planned. So from where we were, under Steve Bruce leadership to the analytics and to be fair to Eddie Howe, Jason Tyndall and the entire team that he brought with him, it's day and night really for us. So I think it'll be a tight game. I don't think, I've seen a lot of people today, it'll be a whitewash and, Man United will cruise at 4-0 and, Rashford will tear them apart. I think there'll be a goal in it. And as I said to you, Keane, coming on, my only hope is it's just not a ridiculous VAR decision for either team that ruins the game for one or the other. If you play a good game for 95 minutes, and probably, I suppose, for us, it's really a free hit because we're the underdogs. We're going into this game as the underdogs. Yep, nobody expected us to be there. We didn't expect to be there. And we're probably going up, I would say, and we chatted about this on our show during the week, we're probably going up against the most formed team in the land at probably the most unfortunate time. Rashford is on fire. Is he the greatest? Somebody mentioned to me today, he's probably the best player in the world. He's not the best player in the world, but at the moment, he is one of the best players in the world. So, for us, when we seen him limp off against Barcelona, I'm not really a churchgoer, but I did pray a little bit that hopefully he wouldn't be playing. But look, we've got to face whatever 11 you put out. I think team-wise, I think for us with what Eddie will do, I think like Pete says, we'll press high. I don't think we'll change our game. I think, we'll probably come out the blocks, depending on how high he allows Trippier to push. And I think that was what Liverpool, unfortunately, did very well in the first 15, 20 minutes against us, was they put Darwin Núñez on Trippier, and it completely rocked our game because he couldn't handle the physicality, unfortunately, with the height and with that bit of strength, and that just opened the game up. And Pete will tell you, very characteristically of us, that first 15 minutes defensively, we were shite. We were woeful. But that's one game. We've only lost 2 games all season, unfortunately, both to Liverpool. And as they say, if you can't win, don't lose. So whilst we've not been scoring, we've still been picking up points, which I think has been the difference. Last season, those games with Steve Bruce, we'd have lost them, and handsomely. So we're in a much better place.
Yeah. So, look, I think you're in a much better place right now. And I think at the end of the day, you can, at Newcastle as a football club, can ask for much more. Like having been in the position they're in, and look, at the end of the day, you haven't, when you look at the ownership you haven't had the chance to obviously even maximize the potential in terms of the signings you can make and the quality of player you can bring in.
That's the thing, because when I think about the year Newcastle is having, the first thing I think about isn't the takeover and the new owners. It's Eddie Howe, because he's done. I know they've brought in a couple of players, but I think people assume they would have brought in a lot more than they have so far. And most of the key players this season are players that were already there, and like you were saying, are out of favour. Eddie Howe is just maximising the players there already. He hasn't spent as much money as people think he would have at age.
We could spend, Shane. That's the thing. We can spend. Like we did a show there with Kieran Maguire, kind of last summer, I think it was. On a window point of view, realistically, we could spend upwards of 500 million. But that's not the way that the owners have gone about it. We've been, as Pete said, we've been quite clever. They bought in Bruno, they bought in Isaac. Okay, but you look at the back five, including Nick Pope. That back five was, less than 70 million. We got Trippier for 13 million from Atletico. Shaw was kind of 5 million. Dan Burn, 13 million. Nick Pope, 10 million. So, for less than the cost of Harry Maguire, we've put together a solid back five that's kind of got us to where we are. So those kind of deals are quite crazy, but that FPP, we're not at the level to go and do a Chelsea or an Arsenal or a Man United or Liverpool, because commercially we're not at your level. We're probably 5 years behind that commercially. So I think from that perspective, and Pete might back this up, summertime, I think, you'll see maybe a bit more of a spend, but I think you'll see a lot more commercially happen. I think you'll see a new shirt sponsor. You'll see probably more stadium sponsors. You'll see different bits and pieces. And as that commercial starts to ramp up and you then increase your earnings, that spend then can push on a bit.
Yeah, like Newcastle have been very subtle how they've gone about since the takeover, which I think is it's obviously the right thing to do, because you look at, say, Chelsea, and Todd Bowley's come in and he's wanting to make a big splash, and just it's not rocket science when you bring in that many players at the same time. Really, you just have a bunch of lads who don't know each other. There's no chemistry. There's just something missing. You can't rush when you're building a team. You can't rush it, and I think Newcastle have gone about it the right way, that they're doing it bit by piece, and they're not putting the manager under too much pressure too quickly.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's Martin's touched on it as well. In the summer, I think you'll see a little bit of a difference. We are behind you guys by a lot in terms of the revenue that you get, the sponsorship deals that you get. I mean, for years, Mike Ashley had us on a sponsorship deal for Sports Direct for like £500,000 a year. In comparison, you guys are getting multi millions, 40, 50, 60 million for various different sponsorships. That's the difference that we've been fighting in for so long. And we are at the early stages now where we are finally getting new sponsorships in, whether it's a sleeve sponsor or it's a sponsor for flying out to Saudi in November or whatever it is. We're trying to build slowly, but the more sponsorships we get, it allows us to spend that little bit more year upon year, and we will get to that point. Like in terms of revenue for the stadium, we've got no issues with that. We're fighting for tickets. Tickets are gold dust. You've got Newcastle fans spending the best part of $2,500 on a ticket to get to the game tomorrow. So we haven't got an issue with spending money or putting money into the club. It's a case of the sponsorships, and can we get the bigger sponsorships that can justify that? Now, you talked about the top four earlier, Keane, and it's going to be really, really interesting because we're already fighting in a position that we never thought we'd be in. But if we were to get Champions League football in any way, shape, or form, it takes us on 2 years again.
It escalates the process, definitely.
It does, because not only will we get the Champions League money, and you guys know how big the Champions League money is and how crucial it is to signing players and attracting players. But if we can get that money in, we then also can attract the bigger sponsors on bigger financial packages, because we are playing Champions League football. And like I say, that will take us on another couple of years and trajectories, and that puts us in a different position. I think at that point, that puts us beyond the likes of Leicester and West Ham, who have tried to fight for Champions League and not quite gotten there. That puts us in a position where financially we can start really kind of sitting at the table with not necessarily yourselves, but certainly the likes of Tottenham and maybe Arsenal, and looking at can we beat them? Liverpool haven't got a load of money. Can we compete with them financially? Definitely.
Liverpool are fucked. I can tell you that now. Liverpool are. I can swear tonight, but they are fucked. FSG are staying in. You can definitely overtake them in a couple of years.
And that's the thing. So, like for one example, not saying we'd sign him. I think it'd be very, very difficult. But Jude Bellingham, could Liverpool afford the transfer that could get him out of Dortmund? Probably not. Could we? We certainly could. And if we were to play Champions League football, we'd have a better case to come with him to say, look, we're a club that's going in the upwards direction. We've got the finances to back it. We're playing Champions League football. Come and play for us. We might not be the Liverpool now, but back us for 2 or 3 years. You're only a young lad anyway. You could be part of our rejuvenation as a club. And it's those sorts of things that we're looking at moving forward. And obviously you guys have got the ability with your potential takeover to just go for it straight away. So you are in a different position, but it's an exciting one for us to be in.
Yeah. I think the other thing, Pete, as well, and just before we kind of move on, I guess, is whatever we do in the club deal-wise, let's not forget, because of what happened with the Premier League and how our deal went through, we're under more scrutiny as a club than any other club that does any deal in that Premier League, because of who our owners are. Now, again, I don't want to get into the ownership of what's right and wrong in Saudi and what isn't, because I'm not a political person. But the fact remains that we have to be very careful, and our owners are not stupid. I'm sure they know they've got, some of the best legal people around, that the deals they do are going to be looked at. If we get a shirt sleeve sponsor and it happens to be from Saudi Arabia or from Qatar or from wherever, it's going to be looked at more closely than a Leicester doing a deal, or Spurs, or Liverpool. And that's just a fact. So we need to be careful. Our owners are being clever. And, for us, and, we take the game tomorrow, as I said earlier on, it's a free hit, because nobody expected it. Nobody expects us to win. We're just there to kind of make the day, and, it'll be a stroll for Man United. So we'll take that. Pete will tell you, we've sat and chatted about this. Where we are as a club, deals to come, what we've got with the owners we've got with a day like tomorrow is we've secured our future. And, what we've always asked for is just have hope. So 12 months on from that takeover, give or take, to be, walking down Wembley tomorrow, lads with black and white shirts getting into that stadium, and we turn out on a pitch. Listen, if we win it, you probably won't see me and Pete for a month. But if not, what we do know is that our future's secure, and that's probably only the first of hopefully many Wembley visits and many Champions Leagues and many cups. But it is just the first of a journey.
Just a couple of points quickly, if you don't mind me interjecting, Keane, on what Pete said. One thing I will say is, I think you are obviously on the upward trajectory. I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. But what I will say is, I think that third and fourth position is very competitive at the moment. Certainly in the last few years, probably last 10 at least. Before you had all the big four and all that sort of thing. With that in mind, I think Newcastle, in order to, and this is not a negative in any way, but I think in order for Newcastle to perhaps attract the better players, I think you probably need 2, maybe 3 consistent seasons in the Champions League to show, right, we're ready, we're there, and sort of make more of a name for yourself. I appreciate, obviously, commercially you're certainly starting to pick up, but do you know what I mean? I feel like that third and fourth for teams like Leicester, maybe even Spurs, and maybe a couple of others, I think it's probably harder for them to attract players still, even though they've been in the Champions League, perhaps because they haven't been there on a long-term basis. Do you see what I mean? So I feel like if you get to top 4 Champions League, which is absolutely in your right and certainly in your sights, I think if you do that for maybe 1 or 2 seasons, I think at that point then you can start sort of pushing and shoving in the transfer windows. And
to be fair, I agree. And I think, certainly if we're looking at the top players in the world, we would have to do that. But what we've already proven this year, in the last year, is that we're not shopping in those markets. Dan Ashworth has come in, and basically, we know the job he did at Brighton. He did an outstanding job, which is why we signed him. And he's made it very, very clear in a number of interviews that if we're going around spending 120 million pound on a player, he's not doing his job properly, because he's looking at unearthing young players that can be the future. When we were first linked with the takeover, back in COVID times, and then when we eventually got taken over, we were linked with the likes of Gareth Bale, Coutinho, and all these already ready-made, established, on the verge world-class players, but we didn't go for any of them. We went for players 1 or 2 rungs below that, because that we know where we are and what Newcastle will want to do. And this is why I think we could still get there, because we have the manager with the mentality and the intentions of getting there. But what we want to do is not buy the ready-made player that's already playing world-class football. We want to buy the player that we can make the next world-class player and have him do that playing for Newcastle United. And that's very different. And that's where, that's where sometimes some teams fall flat. I'm not saying Chelsea are going to fall flat, but what Chelsea have done is just looked at all the best players around and said, "Yeah, we'll have you, we'll have you, we'll have you." And that's not necessarily the makings of a team that are going to be really, really successful. What they need to do, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion alone, is look at players that they can build and develop and make better.
I absolutely agree.
And that for me, from what I've seen of what our club are doing, that's the direction that we're going in. So the players that we're looking at are those players that are not already established, that have won many, many trophies already. What we're looking at are players that we want to be successful at Newcastle and bring trophies to us. So there was someone that put a comment in, I think it might have been Trevor, about the fact that you guys have already got established winners in your team. And that is absolutely right. You've got winners in your team. And that, to a certain extent might help you. But I also argue the fact that we've got players that are hungry to win trophies, that are desperate to win their first trophy ever in their career. The likes of Joe Linton, the likes of Bruno Guimaraes in Europe. He's already talked about winning his first trophy in Europe, in European football. He's desperate for it. For me, that can be the difference sometimes. And that can be the difference, because that hunger, that desire to be the first, to create history for Newcastle United, can also be the difference in games. And certainly from myself and Martin's perspective, we hope that's the case. So it works in both ways. And I want players to come to Newcastle that are hungry to bring success to us, not that have won loads and loads of trophies, that are just going to sit back and go, well, I've won everything, so I can sit back and go on a big fat wage and just enjoy the fact that I'm at a club that are pushing to be there. We want those players like Bruno Guimaraes, like Trippier, that are hungry for more.
I think this is so. Sorry, Keane. Just one last thing. I think you're absolutely right, and I think this is what Manchester United, have really struggled with over the years. And I think this is one of many problems that we have with the Glazers, is the fact that we've gone on sort of commercial interests. Football's evolved a lot over the years, but I think fundamentally it's always been about getting the right player profile. And it's not all about commercial value to a team. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think this is a worry for United fans. With the new ownership, we can't control the sort of politics and everything behind it. We have to just support our team and hope that the right owners come in that are going to get the footballing minds in, which obviously Newcastle are doing very well, and get the right players in, the right profiles in order to fit the gaps that are in the team.
I think with this as well, I think it's very important Newcastle that they haven't gone on a scattergun approach, and that they're doing it in a staged way. And I think, that's something that I think will stand them in good stead, especially Spurs are looking to sell the club, Liverpool are not selling the club, FSG are staying. Effectively, Man City, will Pep stay around for a couple of years? We don't know. So there is a situation where Newcastle can find that window of opportunity, if they do it right, that they can solidify themselves as a top 4 team, and then maybe potentially in as well. Like you said, going to get the superstar signings like your Bellingham, still like your whoever the big money player might be at that time. Newcastle can't do that, and it's something that
I think the thing to remember, Keane, is it's a long-term vision. The ownership that have bought the club, with Amanda Staveley at the front, Maydad, Jamie, the Rubens, people are involved. PIF. It's a long-term vision for the club. So we know from kind of conversations we've had as Newcastle fans, little bits and pieces that we get from, people that might talk to Pete or talk to me, people that kind of know a couple of people within the club or whatever. We know that the owners are looking at it. We know that the likes of Amanda Staveley, Jamie Rubin, and the guys had a meeting with PIF, and they want to fire ahead. But, the kind of leadership team in the club, and Dan Ashworth and Darren Eales, are kind of going, whoa, hang on. Steady on a minute there. Yeah, it's great where we are, but we can't go crazy now. This has got to be a steady journey. It's got to be progression in stages. So I think, Pete's right about, looking at where we are. Trevor and a couple of people in the chat are absolutely right. We are overachieving. But what we've got to do is look at this season. And if we go to Wembley tomorrow and we lose, as a Newcastle fan,
progress.
absolutely, we can't be devastated and go, oh, Jesus, that's it now, season's done. I might have done that if it was Steve Bruce and Mike Ashley and we happened to get to Wembley by a fluke. But because of the ownership we've got, I'm actually very, very relaxed about tomorrow. If we lose, I'm actually quite relaxed about it because I know that we're in a much different trajectory than we were 18 months ago. And I think sometimes you can very easily lose track of that, and you can lose track of where that vision is. So for me, we might not win tomorrow, and maybe I won't see a trophy in my lifetime. I hope I've got enough years left with this ownership that I do get to see something. But it's Pete's kids, my kids, the next generation now that, when I was a kid and I went to St. James the first time with my granddad, you were watching players, Keegan, Waddle, Terry McDermott. Then we had the Keegan years where it was just fantastic for us. Still won shit all, but we had a great time. And I think for me, if I was kind of at Wembley tomorrow, I'd be taking that kind of premise, Pete, I think, which is, listen, we may not win. We might get rolled over. But you know what? I tell you one fucking thing, I'm getting pissed. I'm having a really good time because I haven't had it for so long. And I think that's what you got to remember. You got to just enjoy for what it is.
Every cup final, every occasion you get to, you have to enjoy. And look, I think at the moment, even if you look from our perspective, we haven't won anything in 5 years. And we're in our worst period.
It must be painful, mate.
Hey, it is painful.
Extremely. Yeah.
It is painful.
We're only 55. Don't worry about it.
Look, at the end of the day, look at our drop off though post Sir Alex Ferguson. It's been it's not, we're not used to it. Obviously your situation is different to our one. But
can I ask you, lads, as Man United fans, and I've always kind of thought this, so I will ask this question of you three. Probably for me, as an outsider looking at Man United, I would say probably Erik ten Hag has probably had the best answers to it, or certainly has come out of it well so far. Do you think that since Ferguson, and Pete knows where I'm going with this question, every kind of season or every manager you had since has struggled because Ferguson is still around the club?
I personally don't think so. I think obviously you have figureheads, you have that kind of situation where Ferguson has done incredibly well. Absolutely. I think that the club in itself has just been ran very poorly. We haven't had footballing brains in. I still don't believe we absolutely don't have that now. However, I think that what's happened is I think Ten Hag, you've seen how he sort of conducted himself in presses and interviews. I think he's just been very stern. He was wanted by Barcelona. He was wanted. I think he would have gone to Man City after Pep 100%.
Yeah.
And I was concerned.
I think he's a great manager, Marc. Yeah. I really do. I do rate him. I think the one thing he's done that has helped United, or Manchester United, above everything else, is I think he got rid of the egos. And I think him going to battle with Ronaldo, much to the fans, some fans' demise, I think is the best thing that could have happened at Manchester United, unfortunately, because I think your dressing room was at war. And I think all the time, listen, it was a marquee signing bringing him back, and it was a shirt sales propaganda.
Yeah,
it didn't do the team, and the players that were at Carrington any good bringing Ronaldo back a second time. I think it just brought more dismay. But I think there could only be one winner out of that. And I think to Manchester United's point, I think Erik ten Hag winning that has probably gained a lot more respect from that bunch of players that are there 100%. Now, and I think that's why you're seeing the performances you've been seeing, in particular likes of Rashford and stuff.
I think he's played everything perfectly. I think he's done great things on the field. I think he's done brilliant things off the field. But as I said, I think that you can see the sternness in him, the assertiveness, and I think he said, right, if you want me to come in, I need to do things my way. I need you to listen to me, and I need you to get the player profiles that I want in order to improve this team. I think. One reason or another, they've followed that. I think they've listened, and I think that other than Dubravka, I think all of our signings have been exceptional, and I think that's why you've seen the improvement you have. And we've spoken lyrical about him for weeks now, but I think he's been excellent, and we need to keep him at the club. And hopefully, if we get new owners, I hope they keep him in. They get footballing brains, and I think we'll continue to improve.
Yeah.
First line of business, though, new owners get in. Get obviously get the likes of Richard Arnold, John Murtaugh and all that out of the club, and then get people people like Paul Mitchell, Edmund van der Sar, people who are in the top echelon of chief executives, director of football, things like that. Like they need to go in and get people who are, I suppose, qualified in the role, not people who either A, used to be at the club, or B, are just there to pick up a wage. We do need the best in class. But speaking about
Marc Overmars or somebody like that would be really, really good at Manchester United. Would be
I don't know if they touched him though after what happened with Ajax towards the end. I don't know if they touched him.
I think that ship sailed.
Yeah, that especially with those other controversies at our football club that look at the end of the day that still have to be addressed. So I don't think we won't touch Marc Overmars with a poll at the minute. But speaking of best in class, because that actually kind of brings me into kind of what I want to discuss now. I know I kind of sprung this on both parties very short notice, but we're going to do Man United / Newcastle combined 11 now. What we're going to do here is we're going to get both. I'm going to display both sides combined 11s. So I'm going to put Pete's and Martin's up first, and then secondly, I'm going to bring up Marc's and Shane's. Then what we're going to do with this is both parties are going to have to agree on one combined 11. So I didn't tell the lads they were going to do this.
Yeah,
but
thanks.
I'm ready.
I'm going to bring up both of their combined 11s first, and then
nobody told me this was a 5-hour show.
Don't worry, this will be grand. We're going to get through this, but we're going to bring up the Newcastle combined 11 first. So Newcastle's combined 11 here is Nick Pope in goal. Then we have a back four of Kieran Trippier, Raphael Varane, Sven Botman, and Luke Shaw. Now we have a midfield three here of Casemiro, Bruno from Newcastle. Then you have Bruno Fernandes from Man United, and then we have a front three of Miguel Almiron and Marcus Rashford up top as a striker, and then Joe Linton on the left. So that is the Newcastle combined 11. Now let's bring up Marc's and Shane's. So Marc's and Shane's is slightly different. So you have a few changes across the pitch here. So the goalkeeper has been agreed on. They've Nick Pope. Then we've Kieran Trippier at right back. Then we've a Manchester United centre back pairing in Varane and Martinez. We've Luke Shaw at left back. The same midfield three, and then we've difference up top with Callum Wilson up top, but Rashford is a left midfielder and Miguel Almiron. Now, what I'm very interested with to hear with their decision with the both combined 11, how we combine this is the Newcastle lads have spoken about Joe Linton's importance on Newcastle's team, but also Sven Botman's. But I want to hear the Manchester United argument about Lisandro Martinez, the so-called quote-unquote 5'9" player who wouldn't be able to play in the Premier League. Shout out to my good friend Jamie Carragher. But on that note, goalkeeper, no debate at all, I don't think, lads. Look, David De Gea has done okay. I think his match-winning saves have been good, but I think can we all agree collectively Nick Pope has been probably more consistent this season, and look, his impact, when you consider they had Dubravka and Darlow and keepers like that, I think we can all agree it's a massive upgrade.
100%. I think for us and just for sort of United fans and maybe a bit more on to Pete and Martin is David De Gea is a wonderful keeper, has been a wonderful servant over many, many years now. He's fantastic at shot stopping, but as I mentioned earlier, football's evolved, and this is something that we are going to have to look to phase him out, because we've seen on numerous occasions he is unable to play out from the back, and I think Pope's done that incredibly well. You press high, you have to play out from the back, and I think he's much better at his distribution. And as much as we have to appreciate everything he's done, he's just not the right man going forward. Yeah,
I think we can all agree in that. Look, it's something I've been very vocal about on this channel. And at the start, I got battered, but I'm delighted that a lot of people have been agreeing with me since. Look, the two fullbacks have been collectively agreed on, Trippier and Shaw. What I'd actually say, if you look at both fullbacks, they're probably, outside of the Arsenal fullbacks at the minute, probably the best in the league. Like, there's an argument for all collection of the fullbacks there at the minute. So I think, look, we've no arguments for the fullbacks. But I'm going to come to the Man United lads first. You've gone with a full Man United centre-back pairing. Shane, talk to me why Varane and Martinez have to be the centre-back pairing in this combined 11. Then consequently, I will go down to the lads on Sven Botman.
I don't know, it feels harsh having both centre-halves be United, because I know Newcastle have been more impressive than us defensively this year, but I think a lot of that is down to how they're set up as a whole, where I think Varane and Martinez, their defensive actions tend to be more difficult because they're defending in more wide open spaces and they're winning a lot of their duels. So I don't know, it seems harsh, but I think individually, if you go like who is the two best centre halves of the group of the two teams, I think you go with them as well.
Marc, do you have anything to add to the argument for the partner of Varane and Martinez?
Yeah, you know what? I listen. First of all, I can't disagree with how much Sven Botman is dramatically improved your defence, and this was actually when we were discussing it before the show. This was probably the hardest one for me, and probably the one that I disagreed with least, because obviously he's absolutely improved your defence, but a huge amount. However, I think the acquisition of Martinez has been unbelievable. I think that Varane probably doesn't give enough pundits. I think that he quietly goes about his business more. But I think that if you had Martinez in a team without Varane, it wouldn't be as good. And I think that if you had Varane in a team without Martinez, it wouldn't be as good. And I think that as a centre-back partnership, they've been absolutely wonderful. I think with Martinez in particular over Botman, as a defender, you usually have an aggressor and maybe one that's not as aggressive. And fundamentally what Martinez does is as soon as he crosses that white line, he gets in people's faces. You saw it against Liverpool. He gets in your face, makes the challenges, make his presence known. And I just it's a difficult one. As I said, I think I'd be happy with either one. But for me, being a United fan, I have to defend him. And I just think those two together are absolutely unbelievable. And I think if you asked everybody, if you got 100 people that were completely unbiased and they were to tell you the centre-back partnership, I think it would be either a three of Saliba for team of the season, Martinez and Varane, in my opinion.
I think ultimately what it comes down to is United probably play 10-15 yards higher up the pitch than Newcastle. And that's not me saying Newcastle are parking the bus or anything like that, because I don't think they do. I think they press from the front. They do play a high line a lot of times, but on the whole, I think United do play higher up the field. And at the end of the day, that makes your job harder as a defender. So if you're doing that and having to cover that much space, I just think it's a little bit more impressive than, say, if you're playing that bit deeper and the whole system is slightly more defensive oriented than United's.
Yeah, it's a very viable argument, and I will actually look again. It's very, I suppose, it's a very United centric channel. So we are probably going to get a lot of the comment section saying Varane and Martinez. So I want to give the lads the opportunity below to give their case for Sven Botman, because obviously Newcastle's defensive record this season has been quite good. So I'll come to you first, Pete. Tell me why Sven Botman should be in the team ahead of Lisandro Martinez.
Well, firstly, for me, this is the hardest position on the pitch to decide on, for the reason why. And I'll be honest with you, we're forgetting Fabian Schär here. Fabian Schär, for long parts of this season, has actually performed equally as good as Botman, if not better. He's better on the ball. He's a better distributor of the ball. His recoveries and his interceptions have been one of the best in the league, alongside Botman's. So I think we're being maybe harsh on Fabian Schär here because he's not the name. We tend to just kind of discard him, but he's been equally as good. For Sven Botman, for me, I have to say, is, in my opinion, has been the best centre-back this season. Not only has he come in to a brand new league, to a league that's incredibly fast-paced, that's incredibly more physical than the French league, but he's done it in a team that's not supposed to be fighting for the top, but he's made us better. And he did exactly the same at Lille. He went in at Lille off the back of his loan at Heerenveen and made them better and effectively won them the league. They won the league on their
Could we not say the same about Martinez?
Yeah, you can, but I'll throw out there that up until last Saturday, Sven Botman hadn't lost the game for Newcastle in the Premier League. And he's a big reason for that. Sven Botman is hit the ground running from the beginning. Bearing in mind, he started off the bench. He had to work his way into the team. Dan Burn was starting before. But when he got into the team, he didn't come out. And he, like you mentioned, Varane, goes about his business. He's extremely good on the board. He wins pretty much all of his aerial duels. And I would argue Shane's point of view with regards to how high you guys play up the pitch, because Newcastle also play very high up the pitch. And that's been our biggest change this season, is that we don't sit back. We actually push our centre-backs up, which I was slightly worried about at the beginning of the season, because I worried about the pace of both Botman and Shaw, but they have handled that situation superbly, and they deserve a lot of credit for that, because we do play a very, very high line, which does push teams back, which allows us to press the team even more effectively than we did in even last season. We've been better even this season with that. And yes, it causes problems, i.e. the issue with Liverpool's 2 goals, particularly the sending off as well, was because we played such a high line. But apart from that, it goes to the credit of those 2 players, because I think Sven Botman leads the way. He leads by example. I think there's only one player that's actually got the better of Sven Botman for large parts of any game, and that's Erling Haaland. And I think everyone would agree that you could argue that, okay, fair enough, because he's been that good this season. I don't think any striker has got the better of him for large parts of any game. I think he dealt with everyone very, very well. And I do honestly believe, and I'm not just saying it from your comments, I mean in general from other clubs as well, I think because he plays for Newcastle United, I think that's why people don't give him the respect and the flowers that I think he deserves. Because he's been one of the best performers in the league. And if Sven Botman was doing what Martinez was doing or Saliba was doing in an Arsenal and Man United team, they would be talking about Sven Botman, in my opinion, like they were when Van Dijk first came into the team at Liverpool. Because I look at Van Dijk when he first came in at Liverpool, not what he's been doing in recent years, but when he first came in at Liverpool, and where he kind of made people stand up and take notice. I think Sven Botman has done exactly the same, but it's just because it's in the Newcastle team that people don't give him the respect that I think he deserves. He will be very shortly playing international football alongside Van Dijk, and he will elevate his game even further. I've got no doubt about it. And look, as I've said about Fabian Schär, he has been tremendous this season. Yes, he is 31. He is ticking on a little bit, but he is definitely having the best form of his career at Newcastle United. Martin, I think you'll agree with that. But equally, I think Varane and Martinez have been very, very good as a partnership. It probably took them a little bit longer to get to where they are right now over the course of the season. They had a dip at the beginning. It wasn't great. It's got better now. But for me, Fabian Schär and Botman have been doing it for a longer spell of the season. You throw the clean sheets out there. It's there on paper for me.
Do we look at this in the case that, like, Botman and maybe say Martinez individually have probably improved both defenses tenfold? And is it a case where, like, we have like a very good argument, I think, for both centre halves here? I think Martinez, we both mentioned both of them are ball playing defenders. Both of them, read the game very well. Again, it's a tough one, because obviously as a host, I have to be impartial. Obviously, the Man United head me would say here Martinez, but we do have to be impartial. We do have to give arguments for both. But let's say, for all intents and purposes, will we be happy to maybe, because obviously there's both very good arguments here, we'll be happy to be diplomatic and go Botman and Martinez and Varane miss out, or do the Man United lads want Varane to stay in?
Sorry, Shane, just before you go. So here's where me and Pete disagreed pre-show when we were talking about our team. I went the other way. I went Botman and Martinez. But me and Pete kind of agreed with the Varane Botman piece. And the reason I went with Martinez and Botman was exactly what you said there, Keane. Both come into their respective teams, have both improved their teams defensively, and gone about that job in a way that has benefited players around them, i.e. Shaw for us and Varane for Manchester United. So for that reason, in my defensive, and again, look, fullbacks were easy peasy to choose, and the defense was hard with that 3. But I just went with the Botman Martinez centerpiecing, in the fact that, in my view, for both teams this season, they've both improved their teams dramatically. So my back four would have been the two centre backs would have been Botman and Martinez for me.
I think I can tend to agree a little bit more. As I said, this was certainly the hardest conversation I had with Shane, trying to have come to some sort of agreement. It's a very difficult one. I think I'd probably be happier with Martinez and Botman, but it's still very difficult for me as a United fan, obviously, to take
Shane,
Varane out. He's
Shane,
winners.
in this case, I know Shane's been a very big supporter of Varane this season, and he actually rates Varane more highly, let's say, than Lisandro Martinez. In your case, would you stand firm on the Varane-Martinez partnership, or would you give Botman a shout on this team?
No, I'd be willing to put Botman in because, like I said before, it doesn't really sit right with me having two United centre halves when Newcastle have the best defensive record in the league. Yeah. It feels like you're cheating a bit if you don't at least give them one centre half. So I'm more than happy to have Botman in the team.
And I think that is a key piece as well, is that we have got the best defence in the league.
Yeah, I
don't think that can also be ignored, given where we are, and I know people we are punching above our weight, but defensively, in that league, to have only lost twice and kept the clean sheets we've I think needs some recognition.
I'll remind you of this when we talk about the front three. So I'm expecting a bit more leniency. Yeah.
I'll just add to what Martin said, is that with Botman and Shaw, there's been a number of games this season, and I can't reel the names off, the games off, but whenever we do our reviews, we always look at the stats. And there's been a number of games this season where, because of Botman and Shaw, Pope hasn't had a save to make. He hasn't had a save to make. There's been games where we've had no shots on target. We've had no shots that have had to be saved because of how well the defence has played. So I think that also feeds into that. We don't concede a lot of chances. I think one of the Man United fans put it in the chat earlier on, further up, is that we don't concede a lot of chances. Martin, you mentioned it. The Liverpool game was actually an anomaly to what we've seen this season. You guys would have seen it at Old Trafford. I think you had the Rashford chance later on at Old Trafford, but other than that, you didn't have many clear-cut opportunities because we
should have had a penalty, though.
We tend to give, but equally so should we. Wilson could have had a penalty. So
I think the other thing with our defence as well that people sometimes forget that nobody talks about is we're playing a centre back as a left back in Dan Burn.
Yeah, that's true.
And we have all season, so we're playing a 6'7" centre back as a left wing back with either ASM or Joe Linton in front of him, and we still have the meanest defence in the country. So I think sometimes we kind of underestimate our own defence, and that's why for me and Pete, when we talk after the game on the Liverpool game, it's kind of like it was an anomaly. But when you look at that defence to keep the clean sheets we have, and then you look at Big Dan Burn, you go, Jesus Christ, they're playing the centre back as a left back who presses high with Trippier on the opposite side. Our defence is actually nuts when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely.
On that note, we will actually on that, because the lads have settled with Botman and Martinez, so that we have an agreement on the back five, I think, again, which is probably the hardest part we've had. So we're going to go Pope and goal. I was going to say Karius for a second there. Trippier, Botman, Shaw. Trippier, Botman, Varane. Trippier, Botman, Martinez, Shaw. And now the midfield three, we don't have to discuss in terms of.
Can I just say, I'm not happy about it, but I'll do it because I want these two back on another show.
Yeah. Typical Marc, always the peacemaker. Absolutely.
Voice of reason.
Yeah, voice of reason. Absolutely. Look, the midfield three's already have been picked: Fernandes, Casemiro, and Guimaraes. Yeah. But before we get to the front three, I have to ask both a United fan and a Newcastle fan on here, which Bruno is better? I'm going to come to you, Martin, first. Give your case for Bruno Guimaraes.
Oh, okay. So I think for us, Bruno G is probably everything we've lacked in just being considered, close control considered in being able to see a pass, play a ball, keep a ball. So one of the things that I would have been hugely critical of, and Pete knows this, right? I would have been hugely critical of Sean Longstaff last season. And, Willock at times, because one of the things we really lacked last season was we couldn't pass a ball 10 fucking yards and we couldn't keep a hold of it. So we were the tormentors of our own evil in a lot of the games that we lost because we passed to the opposition, who then broke on us while we were high up the pitch and caught us out. What Bruno has done, and let's not forget with Bruno G, he's not really playing in his true position. He wants to be further up the field. He really wants to be kind of, sitting in behind that 10 or sitting in behind kind of the front two. So he's playing as a holding mid at the moment, which isn't really his preferred position. But what he's done for us is he's solidified that middle. Half dub, half short. Yeah, exactly. He's solidified that middle, and what he's able to do is he's playing those little passes into Wilson. He's connecting that middle of the park to the front 2 or 3. He's able to keep a hold of the ball. And the one thing that I've said for the last few years is what we've kind of lacked. And I think, Keane, when we were on last time, I said to you, the one thing I would want in any team is we've missed a David Batty type player. Somebody that's like a bit of a terrier, gets in, sticks their feet in, not necessarily winds up the opposition, but knows how to tackle and then play a ball. And we haven't had that for a long time. So for me, I think he's brought that to our team in abundance. And on top of that, he's been scoring bloody good goals. So it's clearly obvious when you look at Newcastle United stats with Bruno and without, he makes such a huge difference to us as a team. So I think just that ability to be able to see a pass, play a ball, and some of the finishes, just knowing where to be and where to get into, we have lacked for years. So I think, look, Fernandes does the same kind of thing. For me, I would always say probably our Bruno is a little bit better because I think, unfortunately, whilst Fernandes is a fantastic player and does that link up, lads, he's a twisty fucker at times. I wish he'd just keep quiet and get on with his game. If he could take that little bit out of him, he'd be a really, really good player. But I don't like the way he winds up.
That's why I love him. That's why
I know you do. And listen, if he was playing for us, I would probably say the same thing. But I have to look at our Bruno from a point of what he's brought to the team. So if I look, if you take it purely on statistics and you look at that middle 3, middle 4, when we've got the likes, Willock or Joe Linton or ASM, Almiron, Bruno and Longstaff in the middle, we've kind of got those terriers and that work rate now that Pete was talking about earlier on. And he's a magical player when the ball gets to us. And the problem we have, and we were talking about this on our show, is that we've probably seen, apart from the game against Liverpool, we've probably seen a bit of a drop in ASM at times because Bruno has kind of come in and become the fans' kind of adulation, for want of a better word, since he's come in. But Bruno, I think, will start at the weekend. I think he'll start tomorrow because I think after that Liverpool game, I think he's played himself into that, and we still don't know where Willock is yet. But so Bruno G for me has just brought a bit of craft work to the team, and he's made a massive difference to us. Massive.
Very compelling argument for arguably probably the sign of the season last January. He made a tremendous impact and helped Newcastle stay up in a very difficult period as well. But I'd be remiss if I didn't come to the second biggest Bruno Fernandes fan on this channel. I'm going to come to Mr. Shane Davey. Talk to us. Why do you think our Bruno is more impactful than maybe Bruno Guimaraes?
Funnily enough, more or less for the same reasons Martin said, that his final ball, how he links play, his work rate, all them things. Bruno does all them things as well, but he does them a lot more often. I think when you look at his numbers, and obviously you don't judge a midfielder just by his numbers, but Bruno's, how he manages to always affect the outcome of games so often, even when he's not playing well, he'll pop up with a goal or assist. And he's just an out-and-out match winner. I don't think there's many players in the league that are a bigger match winner than Bruno. I think going off their club form this season, there's not much to separate them. But then if you go and look in the World Cup, I think Bruno Fernandes was one of the best players in the World Cup this year. And I think it gets overlooked a little bit because Portugal were poor for the most part. But even all the intangibles, like Bruno is, I know Harry Maguire is officially the club captain at United, but it's so obvious when you look at the team, like Bruno is the leader in the dressing room. Everything seems to go through him. Everyone comes to him for advice. The way he talks is everything you want in a leader. And just his willingness that even, like, he perseveres so well, even when he's having a poor game. Even if it's really frustrating when things aren't coming off, he'll always back himself. And he's right too, because more often than not, when he does back himself, it does come off for him and he does affect the game positively for United.
Very, very compelling argument. And look, it's actually mad because let's say 12 months ago, myself and Shane would often clash over, like, would he be able to fit in a Ten Hag system? And he's proved a lot of people right, proved a lot of people wrong.
Yeah, he's ironed a lot of the things that fans, like a lot of United fans had a problem with how he was really careless in possession. And it's not just from him trying the Hollywood pass, just simple things in his own half of the field. He'd be very sloppy. And I think he's ironed out a lot of that stuff, and he's matured so much as a player these last few months under Ten Hag. And he's like he is probably one or two players in this United team that Ten Hag sees as undroppable.
Does Marc want to go? So,
yeah, Marc, do you want to come in on that there?
Yeah. Listen, I really rate Bruno G, and I've said this on many occasions that if we had the opportunity to sign him, not that you would be happy for him going, I'd absolutely the three midfielders we've given today, Casemiro and both Brunos, I think would be arguably the best midfield in the Premier League. Absolutely, 100%. What I'd like to see from Bruno G is probably for him to do this on a number of years. You know, he's had a year and a half there. This is the kind of first real season he's had, and there's absolutely no doubt that he's a wonderful, wonderful player. What I always also say as well is if the only thing that pisses people off from rival fans is the fact that he gets in your face, he does wind the fans up, then that's obviously not a bad thing. I think people only ever shout about that is because they actually think he's a good player. You know, all Liverpool fans I speak to.
Marc, he is. He's I'm not going to deny he's a fabulous player. But it's something. Bruno doesn't really get in the face. He can kind of get a little bit hype depending. He gets a little bit overexcited at times. But the one thing probably we probably get that more from Joe Linton than we do from Bruno. He's the one that tends to get the boot in and wind the player up, and is that bit more of a midfield enforcer as such, and kind of goes on the rampage. But it's the one thing as a team, Pete will probably back me up. It's the one thing as a team we've lost. We've never had, even Lascelles as a captain. Trippier now, much like Man United with Harry Maguire. Trippier is captain at the moment, but Lascelles is club captain. But Lascelles, I've always kind of come down on Lascelles at times, even though, this season he's been fantastic. He hasn't played and he's been booked twice. I mean, fucking brilliant. What more could you ask for? But, we've probably played games where we just had absolutely no shithousery about us whatsoever. We didn't surround any other players. We never surrounded a referee. We never, claimed for a penalty when it wasn't. All of those things that other teams would do.
I'm sure you have.
Not particularly, Marc. If you look back at it, you could look at games where we were getting humped, and and Pete will tell you, I would go on our shows and go, "Oh Jesus Christ, Lascelles is doing me nothing. Why doesn't he just? When's he ever going to rag our own players and say, pull your bloody socks up, lads?" And we don't. Whereas now with Trippier, you can always hear him screaming and shouting, and he's the first one to the referee in the right way, and he'll push the players back and he'll state his case. And I think for Man United, I think Bruno does that really well. All players surround refs and everything else. We're all doing it, and we're being accused at the minute of time waste and everything else. The weird thing is that there's only 2 minutes of a difference in what we do and what Man United do. So, look, let's be fair. We all play games and we all kind of
it's
waste
all
a bit
fair
of
enough
time
and
where we
all
need.
at the end of the day.
Absolutely. But then, look, I think that midfield, if you had that midfield of a three, probably I would say throw in Joe Linton into that mix as well. Oh man, that would be some form. It would be a very, very good midfield.
Just a couple of points on that. I've got to rush in a minute, but just a couple of points on that. I think if you were to look at the team of the season, I think Bruno G will get there with Odegaard and Casemiro. I think that would be your team of the season.
Probably, yeah.
What I will say, as I said, I think Bruno G needs to probably do that for longevity. And I think that it is such a toss-up. I also think that they're two different players in a lot of respects. And I think, it's always that like Ronaldo-Messi debate. I've always said, let's just look at it at the fact that we've got two wonderful players that we're watching. Let's just appreciate what they do. And it's very difficult to interchange the two. Okay. But what I will say is Bruno is probably the master of his own downfall to a certain degree. He came into the club, completely raised the ambition, created a ceiling for the club, come in with the numbers. Now he's playing a very different mould now. He's now dropped sort of back a little bit, is kind of interchanging a little bit more, and is not as far forward as he once was. Probably a bit what your Bruno does for Newcastle, right? So I think that the numbers mean absolutely a sweet FA. And ultimately you have to look at what they do for the team. I think, again, this one was a very difficult one for me. I have to back my man. And as I said, if a rival fan, all they can say is no disrespect. All they can say is he riles me up a little bit. I fucking love that.
And to be fair,
absolutely.
We got players in our team that do exactly the same. Jamal Lascelles is one of them. 2 bookings, as Martin said, this season. We've not even kicked a ball. The one thing I'll add about Bruno Fernandes, and look, both of them in a team together would be unplayable in my opinion, because they are both very different players, both playing deeper in their roles than what they would like to. But the one thing about Bruno Fernandes, and I think I've got two of my closest friends that I've known for 20 plus years, that are Man United season ticket holders for nearly 20 years. The one thing they say time and time again is that he gives the ball away all the time. Is that he's always looking for the risk pass. He's always looking for that pass that's going to break the lines, or the Hollywood pass at times. He doesn't keep it simple enough. And I think he does, and having watched him this season, he does give the ball away a lot. Whereas what I would say about Bruno Guimaraes is, and this, I'm not saying this is making Bruno Guimaraes better in any way. This is just Bruno Guimaraes. It's different. Is that what he does? He connects things. So what you'll see on Sunday is a Bruno Guimaraes will sit front and centre in the middle of the centre midfield, and he'll create a triangle with Shaw and Botman, and they'll just play between those triangles. And he will also play that triangle and connect what Trippier, Miguel Almiron and Bruno Guimaraes does in that right-hand side. And he just keeps things connected and ticking over. We've given the ball away against Liverpool in the last 2 games before Liverpool because we can't keep the ball. Bruno Guimaraes allows us to keep the ball. And this is why this season our possession has gone up tenfold off the back of game after game after game, because Bruno Guimaraes connects everything. He also has the ability that when he does get forward, he breaks the lines. He can play the Bruno Fernandes type pass and break the lines and put it in there, but he doesn't take the sort of risks that Fernandes does. Now, you could argue that Fernandes is better because he likes to take that risk, and that pass does come off sometimes, and it does, and when it does, it's a wonderful pass. He did a couple against Leicester. He did another one, I think, against Barcelona on Thursday. He has that ability.
I think he's more of a risky player. I think a lot of fans, even United fans, get frustrated with him because he is that risky player. Now, with a risky player, as I said many, many times, it's a risk for a reason. You play the risky passes. Yeah. When they come off, they look magnificent, but you also give the ball away a lot, and that's not his detriment. You know what I mean? He said in an interview, I think he said he'd rather play those passes and for them to come off than not do all those passes at all, if you see what I mean.
No, I agree. Like I say, I wasn't saying that because I was saying that Bruno Fernandes is better. I'm saying it's just because this is where they're different. We have, me and Martin talk all the time. We've got Alan Maximin that's a very risky player that likes to take on players and commit players in difficult positions. What that might mean is that he does lose the ball sometimes. And sometimes we have to go, you know what? Okay, he does lose the ball. But there are times where he'll take 2 or 3, 4 men on and whip a ball into the box and create an opportunity that nobody in the team would have been able to create. And I get your point on the back of that. But what I will say is that Bruno Fernandes, his first 2 years at Man United, the numbers he got were unbelievable. And I don't think any midfielder would be able to sustain those sorts of numbers.
No, not at all.
Back of that. So I'm not surprised that he hasn't. But both equally very, very good players in different positions. And like you said, to end on, I think we're very lucky to have either one of them in our team.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Absolutely.
What I will say is I'm going to have to run now, guys, and I do apologise for that. I've got a lot of respect for Newcastle. I'm very, very happy that they've got new owners and you're absolutely flying high. I'd much rather see you in the final than Chelsea, Liverpool, or City. I can assure you that. But listen, Chelsea, yeah, absolutely. Fucking can't stand Bowley. Anyway, yeah, as I said, good luck tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be good. We will get you back on again soon. We'll have a discussion about it, I'm sure, at some point. But yeah, very much good luck to you boys, and may the best team win, as I said. All right.
Cheers, Mark.
All right, there, Mark.
Good to see you, mate. Take it easy, mate.
Before we get the score predictions, the front threes are more or less the same. Only for the Newcastle fans actually have to decide: Wilson or Joe Linton, who's going in?
That's an easy one for me.
Got a new
for me, Joe Linton all day long. More robust, has been star man last 2 seasons. Wilson, unfortunately, in that front three, for me, as much as he is a great goal scorer, is poacher extreme. He's just too injury prone for me, and certainly the last few games when he's had good opportunity hasn't been as clinical as he can be. So if I'm looking at that front three, Rashford's clinical ability outstrips Wilson at the moment for me as a team of the moment. But I think Joe Linton's work rate and his midfield ability as a midfield governor, for want of a better word, puts him in that team ahead of Wilson if you go with the Rashford up front, which I would do.
Pete, any difference? Would you like to see Wilson in this team? Now, I'll throw the caveat at you there. Marcus Rashford's best form this season has come off the left-hand side. Would you go for the more natural striker in Wilson, or would you go Rashford through the middle?
I'll be honest with you. I don't think we can have a combined 11 without having Joe Linton in the team. So I would fit Joe Linton any way we possibly could. And if you, like Martin's just said, if you match up Rashford and Wilson's done well. He's got 10 goal contributions already this season. He's barely, there's been a number of games that he's been missing for this season. He's still got that, which is great. But Marcus Rashford has outplayed him and outscored him and been more of an effective player in his performances for Man United. So for me, I would quite happily take the hit and play Rashford as the frontline striker. Yes, he might not have been at his best there, but I think he deserves to be in that team ahead of Wilson. But we cannot discard Joe Linton. Joe Linton has to be in every single Newcastle team, let alone in this combined 11. So you have to find a way for him to play there. And look, he hasn't been his scoring best in that left-hand side of midfield, but you couldn't go wrong with playing him there, in my opinion.
If you had a left-hand side of Luke Shaw and Joe Linton, like defensively, I don't think, many right wingers would get many chances down that wing. So look, I agree. Look, he's a good player. I think, look, the only part I'd say for me, maybe, and Shane might agree, is watching Rashford this season, he's been like, not many players have contained him on that left-hand side. And like, we'd love to see a number 9. Like, we were only talking about this recently. I think Callum Wilson, if you put him to United's team right now, he'd probably be a better striker than Weghorst right now up top. And we'd be a lot more balanced as a team, So, like, look, I completely accept, like, look, you're Newcastle fans, you'd know them 2 players a lot more than probably me and Shane would. So, look, we will agree on Joe Linton and Rashford as a striker. But look, and obviously, look, Miggy Almiron, shut Jack Grealish up as well. I think as all like the three Irishmen here will all love that one. But Shane, do you want to come in on that point?
No, I agree pretty much with what the lads say. I'm happy to go with that.
Perfect, spot on. On that note, though, last part, score predictions. So is my favorite part of the stream, but not for a fucking cup final. It's not my favorite part today. We're going to come to the opposition first, and to get their score predictions. Then the United lads will give it there. I forgot to get it off Marc, but look, whatever happens will be. Martin, going to come to you first. Give us your score prediction for tomorrow.
Yeah, look, I think tight game. I think it'll be battle of the midfield. Interesting for me will be to see where does Rashford play, if he plays. I think he will. I think it's a little bit of mind games. I'm absolutely sure he'll line out. I'd be positive. I don't know how often he does or if he does, but it would be funny if he was matched up on the right up against Dan Burn, because I think if he did, he would do some serious damage. So up against the left with Trippier, I'd say we probably stand a bit more of a chance. Or will he go central? So it's kind of hard to know where he's going to be pushed. But I think it'll be a tight game. I think if Manchester United score first, I just hope we keep the heads and we don't panic, which is what I said to Pete. But in my heart, I think too many games for Man United in a week. Yes, you've probably got another level to go, but I think our fitness will tell, and I'm going to go for a close 2-1 win for Newcastle tomorrow.
So Martin's going 2-1 Newcastle. Pete, are you in agreement? Are you going to be more ambitious with the score prediction, or do you think it's going to be similar to Martin, like a very tight game?
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a tight game, but in a very different way. I think it'll be a tight game in terms of score, but not in terms of chances or goals. So, as I mentioned on Loaded Mag NFC, I think it's going to be a nail biter. I've gone for a 3-2 Newcastle United win. I think both teams are going to go at each other. I think both teams are going to go hammer and tong at each other. It's going to be attacking. It's going to be entertaining for the neutral. As always, Newcastle United and Manchester United games are. But I do think that we could potentially edge you out. I'm going to go with and stick with my 3-2 prediction. I think it's going to be an absolute cracker of a game.
I was at the last EFL Cup final United rat. It was a 3-2 game, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic scored in the 87th minute. Talk about a nail biter. I got blown back about 3 rows when he scored. So I know it's all about in nail biting Carabao Cup finals. But Shane, on that note, both lads have gone both close score predictions. Are you in agreement with the lads that it's going to be a close game? Is it going to be a less competitive game? What's your mindset, considering look, we've had 2 very tough games before this one?
Yeah, I agree with the lads. I think it's going to be very close. I think United will be gassed towards the end of the second half, I'm sure, because with the Barca game a few days ago, and even just since the World Cup, we've been playing every 3 days. So I think that will show. I think it will finish 1-1 after 90 minutes. And I think Newcastle will win on penalties.
Oh,
holy crap, shit. I wasn't expecting that from you.
Oh, no way.
Shane, I weren't expecting that.
No, I thought you were going to go and Man United will sneak it in extra time. I was all right, thanks for that. Do you know what? We've actually, the amount of people have texted me today and gone, do you know what? This is going to be 0-0 full time, 0-0 extra time, Newcastle on penalties, and Carice is going to save a penalty from Rashford or somebody to redeem himself, and Newcastle will win it 1-0 or something stupid.
Lars Carey's potential. I can't have that, especially with Scousers being my DMs as well. I'm going to go.
I'm relying on Scousers to be in the pub with me tomorrow, Keane. So otherwise, I'm at a distinct disadvantage here in my local mate.
On that, I'm going to go United 2-1. I think obviously there's a lot of mental fatigue could be there from playing a lot of games, and that could happen. Well, I just think we've too many match winners in there. We've too much experience. I think likes of Varane, Casemiro, Martinez, Bruno Fernandes. I just think they'll get us over the line. It's going to be very tough. It's going to be very, very tough. But I just think their winning mentality is going to get us over the line. I truly, truly believe that. And I'm going to go for our goal scorers because no one's actually gave a goal scorer. I'm going to go Casemiro to score and Marcus Rashford to get the winner for another feather in the Greg Chambers and Reece Russell cap. So yeah, I'm going to go 2-1. I'm going to go Casemiro and Marcus Rashford winner late on as well. But on that note, we've gone over, but to be fair, it's been a very good conversation. We've got a lot about Newcastle, a lot about United, and I fully and unbelievably agree with this comment. It's going to be a great game. It's two hungry teams, hungry for silverware, two sets of fans crying out for good times again. And look, I think that's the most important thing. Look, we're both looking to kind of make that next step, and look, hopefully for Man United, it's us that make that. But on that note, we will wrap up. Thanks very much for everyone tuning in. Make sure to like the video and do subscribe, and also check out Loaded Mag as well on YouTube as well. But thanks very much, lads, for coming on. Best luck to the lads for tomorrow, but not too much luck.
Yeah,
Until then,
same to you, mate.
That's the action tomorrow.